Hi everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am finally talking about critique partners, what they are, and why you need them. I've mentioned critique partners in a lot of previous videos. I've also had you guys ask me questions about critique partners because I've said before how essential critique partners are to, really any writer who wants to improve their craft and work on their books and especially be traditionally published. But it is all easier said than done. Critique partners are invaluable, but not easy to find. To that end, I'm actually going to have a whole video that just focuses on how you find critique partners and a few best practices for working with them. But this is your broad overview of what the heck they are and why you need them. So a CP is a critique partner, and it's someone with whom you exchange work and you give each other feedback and notes on your book. Usually critique partner relationships are reciprocal, but not always. There's nothing wrong with having a so-called one-sided critique partner relationship, especially if this is your choice. If you go in knowing, I really want to read this person's work, I would love to read it and give them feedback, and I don't necessarily mind whether or not they reciprocate by reading mine. Or a CP relationship can be one-sided for a time, like say a year, and then later, when you have work to share or vice versa, it becomes reciprocal. Also, critique partners don't have to be writers as a rule, though I find generally, of course, when it comes to reciprocal relationships, which tend to be the most successful relationships, of course, you can't reciprocate unless someone is also a novel writer. It's going to be someone who not only writes books, but writes books in your genre that you are interested in reading and they are interested in reading yours. But definitely don't discount CPs who are not writers themselves. There are many people who are just darn fine editors. And I mean, most agents and editors aren't writers themselves, but they're very, very good, of course, especially in the case of editors at editorial. So don't knock someone who's just an excellent reader and gives great feedback. But I'd say that an ideal CP relationship is one where you click on every level. So that is, you want to read each other's work, you are reciprocating and trading manuscripts, you write in the same genre, but also you write on the same level and have the same ambitions. So level means that if you are a very newbie writer, they're also a pretty new writer. So you're working kind of together and are at the same stage approximately in your writing. Or on the flip side, if you are an advanced level writer, you've written a couple books, maybe you have an agent, you even have a book deal, typically you're going to want to partner with writers who are at that level because you're going to get more out of the relationship. It's going to be more fair, more equitable, and just deeper. Because if you're a more advanced writer, say I'm on my 4th novel now and I have a book deal, right? I'm not going to get as much out of having a total newbie writer read my work because they won't have the same sophistication level when it comes to prose and storytelling techniques, and I just probably wouldn't get as substantive feedback. Level also ties into genre and knowledge of the genre and the industry. You want someone who is well-read in what you are writing. You also want to be well-read in what you are writing and what they are writing, and that way you can both be very aware of kind of the market and books out there and tropes and storytelling, kind of mechanisms and techniques, and you will be good brainstorming partners because you're approaching, the market and the industry and the genre at the same kind of speed and level. Also, career ambition. One of the best things about critique partners is that they're your writing friends too, usually. You connect on every level and you want to end up in the same place. So that could be indie. You find really great critique partners who also want to be indie published in similar genres, and they just become your awesome writer friends and you share your work with them. Traditional. You both want to be published by the big 5. You're at approximately the same stage, like maybe you're both on your 2nd or 3rd books and you both want to get agented, and you can go through those steps together. Because a huge part of critique partner relationships, it isn't just the editorial, it isn't just the notes that you're gonna get on your book, though that is a huge part of it because of how big self-editing and revision is a part of being a professional writer. But it's just really good to have writer friends. And you can have writer friends that you don't share your work with and they don't share their work with you, and those are really deep and wonderful relationships as well. But there's something to be said in the earlier stages, especially before you get an agent, so pre-querying and during querying, of someone who knows you really, really well, you know them really, really well, you know each other's books really well, and you're both aiming towards the same goals at the same time. But then there's the catch. It's really, really hard to find these people. Finding good critique partners and finding the best writer friends is honestly just like finding friends in real life, or dating if you want to use a romantic metaphor. Especially when you're an adult, it is hard to find like-minded friends that you click with on every level, and it is hard to find good CPs that you click with on every level. So I'll tell you kind of my story, my anecdata. It took me 2 or 3 years to find like my core group of CPs, and that involved a lot of trial and error, connecting with friends and, trying to do it, but finding, our writing paces weren't matching or our tastes weren't completely compatible. Like, if they don't love reading your book, even if you love reading theirs, unless you're 100% okay with it not being reciprocal, you're gonna end up being disappointed. And so finding that match of someone that like really fits you on every level can take time. And I will say though, once you click with one like really great CP, it all kind of snowballs from there, and it does kind of become easier to find other CPs, partly because you have your core CP relationship, and when you're trying to find new CPs, there's less on the line. You're less desperate for that person. You have your golden fallback, so there's a little less pressure in developing new relationships, which I think makes them easier to develop. It's catch-22 that the hardest one to develop is the first one. But also, you just get a better sense of, how you found fit the first time, and you get a better sense of how you're gonna find fit later. Again, I'm gonna go in depth about finding critique partners in my Finding and Working with Critique Partners video. All right, now to make it more complicated, there are actually different kinds of CPs that you might want to use for different functions. I'll tell you, I have like a football bench roster of critique partners. I do have some core critique partners who kind of hit it on all cylinders for me, or at least the cylinders that I need. But then I have my so-called roster of critique partners, so when I need one of the other kinds, I can go to that person for a specific and targeted read. I have probably more critique partners than the average bear. I want to say my core critique partners, I have 3 or 4, but my extended roster / bench, it goes as high as 11 or 12, just because as I've made more writer friends, I've definitely found more people that I've connected with and that I read for. And I have a lot of people that I read for, including non-reciprocal relationships, because I just really like critique partnering. But enough about me. Types of critique partners. So the kind of holy grail one that is usually going to form your core relationship is going to be the big picture developmental feedback CP. And this is important to note that there are different kinds of editing that you end up doing on books. And I kind of covered that in the stages of editorial that you do after you get a book deal video, in the sense that once you get a book deal, you kind of run through each of those kinds of editing. But the big one that you're always going to end up doing and falling back on when you do revisions, the very important revisions that you need to do to make your books better, is developmental edits. That's when you're looking at the book both on a macro and a micro level. You have to look at it as a whole, like how is it working as a whole, but also on the micro level of how is the pacing working, the character arcs, foreshadowing in different sections of the book, and so on. And so a big picture developmental critique partner is going to function the same way that an editor at a publishing house would. Your core editor at a publishing house does developmental edits with you. They give you they read the whole book and they give you an edit letter and they give you big feedback on what's happening on the page, what is working for them, what isn't working for them, and what you need to work on to make the book better. So core Holy Grail CPs are really, really, really good at that. And the thing is that not everyone is really good at that. Not everyone is able to communicate their feedback in a constructive and helpful way that you're able to then take and, take action on. But when you find them, like I said, they're gold. And if you want to be a good critique partner to reciprocate, you also want to work on these skills. You want to work on the skills of being able to read a book, and it's, if there are issues with it, not just to say, I had problems with it, I was bored, but to say, okay, in this section of the book, the pacing dragged, I think because character X's motivations weren't clear. You want to be able to articulate that. And so big picture feedback, critique partners. Then you have critique partners who do something more akin to line edits or copy editing. And that is the critique partner who's really, really good with grammar and usage and sentence structure. And they will actually go through your manuscript, usually in Microsoft Word, and they're going to do track changes and inline comments. And these are critique partners who are really, really good at helping you polish your manuscript. I find that these kinds of critique partners are definitely more useful either later on in the revision process or when you're at a higher level as a writer. Because when you're at a higher level as a writer, you might not need an external source to tell you what's broken about your book. You might be able to figure out and fix it yourself. So someone who's really, really good at line edits or copy editing will come in handy there. There's also just what I call the cheerleader critique partner, and that is someone who their job is to love what you're writing and read what you're writing and tell you that you're doing an awesome job, and they ship the ships. And if you have them and work with them while you're writing, while you're drafting, they're the one who's saying, oh my gosh, you have to send me the new chapter. I'm dying to read it. And I think that cheerleader critique partners play an essential role in being part of the roster, being on the bench. I don't think they're ideal as a sole critique partner. So if you only have one, if you have to choose, you want one who's good at those constructive criticism, big picture developmental edits. But I do actually recommend that the average author you don't have to have as deep a bench as I do, but has 2 to 3 people that they can call on a regular basis. And I think having at least one of those people be a really good cheerleader is a great idea. Now, it is possible to find a single critique partner who does all of these things, and if you do, thumbs up, congratulations. That is the holy grail of critique partner, really, more even than just the developmental big picture one. You want someone who can do all of these things. So now, why do you need a critique partner / critique partners in the plural? It's because no one should be writing in a vacuum. Really, we can't write in a vacuum because ultimately your books are going to end up going out into public consumption, and that's definitely not a vacuum. People are going to read your words, people are going to have thoughts about your words, and none of us are allowed to just be that creative genius who locks themselves in a closet and writes books, and all that matters is what we want and what we feel. Most of us write because we want people to read our words, so thus you are never writing in a vacuum. You should never be in this process totally alone. External feedback is valuable. It makes our work better. And when you get a qualified critique partner, because not all individuals who want to give critique are qualified, I've also got a video planned on that, on how to evaluate critical feedback. But when you work with someone who's just really good at identifying what makes a story tick or what makes something not work and how to fix it, it makes you a better, stronger writer. Having to critically engage with your own work and push outside of your comfort zone and your first instincts will always make the work better. No one writes a perfect first draft. No one burps out a book and, 2 years later, being realistic, it's published untouched. All books have to go through revision, and critique partners just make us better writers. Moreover, if you are pursuing traditional publishing, you cannot submit first drafts to agents. You should never query something that hasn't been revised at least once, and I don't even want to be prescriptive and tell you it should be X number of times. All I know is it shouldn't be 0. You want to put your best foot forward when you are querying agents because you only get one shot with an agent 98% of the time. And so you want to, before you query, write your manuscript, you let it sit, you employ critique partners, you get feedback, you develop a game plan, you revise to make your book better and stronger. Similarly, I think critique partners can be incredibly useful even if you're not pursuing traditional publishing, if you're going for indie publishing, because, well, more eyes on your manuscript will make it better. Writer friends are amazing, and ultimately, feedback on your work will make it better and stronger if you learn how to take it and make it actionable to revise your book into a better state. Now, about paying editors. So I've touched this before, but essentially if you're pursuing traditional publishing, you should not pay a professional editor to review your work. This is what critique partners are for. This is another reason that critique partners are so valuable, because critique partners are free. This is a gift economy, so to speak. That's what we always called it in fandom, where it is reciprocal, or if you're not critique partnering with another writer, if you're critique partnering with someone who's primarily a reader, they get enjoyment out of critiquing, and so that is kind of the payment for the services, so to speak. It is a reciprocal, free, friendship, joy-based endeavor. You shouldn't have to pay an editor. You should be able to find free and qualified good critique partners instead of doing that. Now, if you're going indie, you do want to end up eventually paying professional editors to edit your work if you are indie publishing. But as I mentioned, it's never a bad idea to have critique partners working with you in the earlier stages of your book. PETA loves critique partners. So yeah, that's my broad overview of what critique partners are and my passionate pitch for why you need them. Critique partners, they make you better, and critique partners are writing friends, and writing friends are amazing, and who doesn't want awesome writing friends? So stay tuned for my how to find and work with critique partners video and my evaluating critical feedback video, because you need to consider all of these things before entering into a critique partner relationship. Because as I mentioned, it is hard to find good critique partners, but once you have them, you will never look back. You will be a better writer, and you will be so, so happy that you did find critique partners. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. As always, drop them down below. I would appreciate a thumbs up if you liked this video. It lets me know what kind of content you guys want to see on the channel. As always, if you're not already subscribed, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I post videos 2 to 3 times a week. I talk about writing craft, the industry, and young adult fiction in particular, and pursuing traditional publishing. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and as always, happy writing.